Hi everyone, my name is Emily. I'm an alcoholic, and that we are on the Design for Living Big Book study. And with me is sitting in for Elizabeth is
Paige, alcoholic.
welcome. Thank you for doing that. We are on page 58. Yes, correct.
Yeah, 58. Woo!
All right, how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover, people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually, sorry, I must forgot my spot. Usually, men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. They are such unfortunates, so they are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Um, I just like the first sentence. It says, "Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path." You know, I've seen that in the rooms, and that is my experience. As long as I see people actually, doing the work and, they're thoroughly doing the program of A, like going to meetings, sponsoring others, and, actively making their amends every day and all of that. I see that they stay sober no matter what happens in their life. And we are part of the no matter what club. Like, we just don't pick up a drink or a drug no matter what. um and then they are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. It only took me a matter of being honest with myself that I was able to face who I was. I knew I was an alcoholic, but I didn't know how to ask for help and get sober. So as a result of getting a sponsor, and she is able to point out my defects of character. I'm able to work through those every day. And then who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders. It is true that a lot of us do have a lot of mental health issues. I do for sure, like depression and stuff. But through um, work in the program and some outside help, I'm able to work through those. And only through God, He's able to help me get through the day and be present and help other people, through the program and all of that. So I will pass it over to Paige.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. And yeah, as we're kicking off chapter 5, what we're diving into is the chapter called How It Works. And one of the things that I want to emphasize is the last two words. It works. It works. What we have here works. There is a solution. There is an answer. And here's how. It's funny. I go to this in-person meeting, and sometimes there's people that will share, as if this is a mystery. It's like, there's something that happens that we don't know what. And I'm like, no, we know how it works. There's a chapter called How It Works. We know. That isn't to say that there isn't a phenomena that we can't quite explain in the nature of the spiritual awakening. But how this thing works is what we're going to see on page 59, the 12 steps. It is the 12 steps as outlined in this book that take me from that hopeless state that I'm at in step 1 to the awakening of the spirit in step 12. This is how we get free. This is how it works. And I love, yeah, the first sentence you were talking about, Emily. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. But I don't know about you guys. This first paragraph, there's something about, I think it's any human being's brain, but definitely my brain. We hear this being read at like almost every meeting we go to. And that first paragraph, there's something where my brain is like, I'm going to fail. I'm constitutionally incapable. I'm the one that can't do it. I'm bad and wrong. Like that's how my brain goes. And what I point out is exactly what Emily was talking about. Rarely have we seen a person fail. Now, there is a myth, and I will point out it is a myth. I can't get away with making up history. Gary's here, but people have said that Bill said if he could have changed anything in the book, he would have changed rarely to never. That's not true. He didn't write that. But why would that myth persist? That myth persists because we hold up, yeah, we hold up the light of our own experience. And as Emily was talking about, we have not seen anyone fail that was doing all of this. And so one of the things that I like to do, and it's scientific, I like to what I call Missy Elliott it. If you remember in the early 2000s, Missy Elliott had that song, you flip down, flip it, and reverse it. And then, so what? No, she talks about you got a big book, let me search it. I'm pretty sure it's you got a big book, let me search it for clear-cut directions on how to recover. I can't think of any other possible meaning. So I like to switch it to glean the meaning. So rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. So we can switch it. Often have we seen a person fail who has not done this work. Is that our experience? Right? And then we can do it with the next sentence, those who do not recover. So those who do recover are people who can and will completely give themselves to the simple program. That is all that is asked of me. I mean, that's all, no big, just completely give myself to this course of action, which is described as ego deflation at depth. Just completely do that, no big, no fresh, but that's all that is asked of me. And when it talks about the people who are constitutionally incapable, one of the hills that I die on, I know, it says we've ceased fighting anything or anyone in those step 10 promises, but this is one of my hills. And that hill is that you are not constitutionally incapable. If you're here today, you showed up on time, which all of you did. I'm like, where are the stragglers? Look at you guys, punctual as heck. All of you showed up on time. All of you are here. You are not constitutionally incapable. So constitution is at base, at root, and incapable is unable. And that's not you. There's only been one time in my life that I've ever worked with somebody that I thought could be constitutionally incapable. And I'll tell you what, she just wouldn't show up. She just would not show up. And it wasn't even that she wouldn't show up. It was she wouldn't show up and she couldn't be honest about it. There was one time I remember I was traveling back to Calgary. We had an appointment. I was on a bus. I remember this because I'm worried that other people heard me. They definitely did. And she said, I can't make it to the meeting today. I've got radiation poisoning. And I remember like meeting with me. And I remember being like, no, you don't. No, you don't. She's like, well, I still can't come. That is constitutionally incapable. If you're here today, that's not you. If you're relapsing and you're struggling with getting sober, that is not constitutionally incapable. To relapse is a sign of alcoholism or a sign of addiction or whatever brings you to this all-inclusive study. So if you are relapsing, if you are struggling, you are not constitutionally incapable. That is a symptom of this illness. And guess what? The steps take us to the treatment so we can apply them. And then it does, as Emily was saying, there are people who have grave, which is serious, like fatal emotional and mental disorders. But it talks about their chances are less than average. Well, what was average? Well, the forward to the second edition gave us some numbers. So on average, 75% got well and stayed well. So less than average would be less than 75%. But whenever we talk about percentages, it's important to remember that we don't really keep statistics of these things. So if you go to a 12-step fellowship, one of the things many fellowships do is they divide the number of newcomer chips by the number of one-year chips that they sell, which you can tell is not a good way to figure it out. But we don't keep records. But here's the thing. What is my success rate coming to whatever 12-step fellowship you're a part of? It's 0. I am batting at 0%. I got nothing. It's a swing and a miss, baby. I don't got an answer. So I'm batting 0%. So even if I'm showing up with grave, which is to say fatal, incredibly serious mental and emotional disorders, or I'm showing up with a track record of relapse, which again is a sign of this illness, my chances are better than what I've got on my own. And the only thing that is asked of me is that capacity to be honest. Now, to talk about what that honesty is, we're we'll grow into the cash register honesty, but what we're talking about, the level of honesty, is to be honest that I have a problem and that I need help. That is the honesty that is required for me to at least begin to grasp this thing. It will grow. My level of honesty will grow. My level of willingness can grow. It can grow, but I got to start with I have a problem and I need help. So I'll toss it back over to you to take the next paragraph.
Thank you. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. Um, yeah, I like how it compares the what happened, what we are like now, and what we used to be like. No, because we can just kind of compare like before the steps of like what our life was like and like what we did and what happened. And then again, just reiterating the honesty. Willing to go to any length to get it, and to daily surrender and ask God to be honest with ourselves and with other people. Then obviously we are ready to take these 12 steps you know with all the honesty that we can, and God willing, that he's able to help us through our sponsors, and our sponsor can help us. And I just like reading the stories as well, like when they became honest with themselves as well, like, and we all come from different backgrounds and lifestyles and stuff, but we all have one thing in common is we need help, we need to surrender and ask God. And that is how we all you know have unity together, and um, can live the same lifestyle. That's all I have for that. Go ahead, Paige.
Awesome. All right, yeah. And I love that it's like what we used to be like, what happened and what we're like now. Which I'm by the way, there's a point in how it works I'm pedantic. I'll tell you where I'm pedantic because based on we might not get there today. Where I'm pedantic is that it is spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection, as opposed to progress, not perfection. That's a hill I die on. You're getting all my hills today. Hills and valleys. Welcome to the study. Uh, but I will point out it's not what it was like. It was what I was like. So what was I like? And what I want to do is share my lived experience with the allergy and the obsession. And depending on the crowd that I'm in, it can also be vitally important that I share my experience with the spiritual malady. But I want to focus, what was it like when I took that first drink, or I took that first drug, or I engaged in whatever that addictive behavior that brings you to this study. And so that's what I want to share about. Like what happened once I started, that inability to control the amount that I took. Then I want to share about my experience with the obsession of the mind. When I said, you know what, I come to the morning after, I'm filled with that guilt and shame and remorse and self-hatred. And I scrape myself up off the bathroom floor and I say, I'm never going to do it again. But a day, a week, a month later, I get a thought in my mind that tells me this time will be different. Nobody'll ever know. I just got to get it out of my system. And so that's what I want to share about. Now, the spiritual malady, not diagnostic of this illness, but that is what the spiritual awakening is treating. That's what we're focusing on. That's what we're going to treat. So it might be helpful to share about what it was like when I put down the drink, when I put down the drug. And I was filled with that pervasive sense of emptiness and loneliness. And that feeling that who I am is not enough and I can't face a day. And life was so painful. That can be helpful. That's what it was like. And then what happened? Well, what happened is the 12 steps and the spiritual awakening. That's what happened. That's what brought about the change. And so it's important for me to share my experience with those 12 steps. Not these, but with the steps. And to share my experience with the spiritual awakening. And then, what am I like now? Getting current about what is my lived experience living in as an awakened person who is still frequently wrong and deeply flawed. You can ask my sponsor about that. What is my experience with that? And so this question is the next part of this is a statement. Two statements that we get to turn into questions. And it says, so as Emily read, if you decided you want what we have, okay, what do we have? Well, what we have is permanent, contented sobriety. That's what we have. Now, there's an asterisk on that, which is rude. Why are we always throwing in some fine print on this bad boy? But the fine print is that I have permanent, contented sobriety contingent on the actions that I take on a daily basis. But do I want that? And it's okay if you're here and you're like, no, I don't. That's okay. But do I want what we have? And that the next statement that I get to turn into a question is, am I willing to go to any lengths to get it? And I get to ask myself. And it's if you're not, that's okay. But if you are, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get well, whatever it takes to bring about a spiritual awakening. Then I'm ready to take certain steps. Certain is the ones on page 59, those ones. But one of the things I'll point out, do we feel like doing a little bounce around? Doing some bouncing? Yeah? All right. So what we will see is that this is not a new idea. What we will see is that this question or this statement that we can turn into a question is going to be asked again and again and again in this book. So what I'll do is I'll tell you the pages that we're going to bounce to. So if you want to write it down, we can. So what we're going to do is we're going to go bounce to page 42. Then, so page 42, then we're going to bounce. So we're on page 58, we're going to bounce to page 90. Then, so 42, 90, then page 112, 42, 90, 112, and then 142. So 42, 90, 112, 142. All right, and I'm just saying that so that people have time to write it down. It's a little early for me, so I'm slower than I normally am, so we'll be grateful for that. So let's pop over to page 42. Page 42. And so what we'll see is the first full paragraph. Two of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself an alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. That same idea. And that like, do you want what we have? Are you willing to go to any length to get it? That same idea. Now let's pop over to page 90. So page 90, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the 1, 2, 3. There are people who are really good at numbering the paragraphs and can rattle off paragraph 4. I have to count. I don't have numbers. So it's the paragraph that says, sometimes it's wise to wait until he goes on a binge. Now we're going to skip to near the bottom of that paragraph where it says, wait for the end of the spree, or at least a lucid interval. Then let his family or friend ask him if he wants to quit for good and if he would be willing to go to any extreme to do so. That's the same question. If he says yes, his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. So if they're willing to go to any lengths, then cool, let's introduce so that we can get them through this course of action. Let's pop over to page 112. Let me know if I'm going too fast. Page 112. And what we're going to do is 1, 2, 3, third full paragraph right near the bottom of the page, where it says, suppose, however, your husband fits the description of number 2. That paragraph, third full paragraph, page 112. It says, the same principles which apply to husband number 1 should be practiced. But after his next binge, ask him, so same question, if he would really like to get over drinking for good. Do not ask that he do it for you or anyone else. Just would he like to? Do I want to get free of this thing, right? Last bounce. I shouldn't promise because I might have a thought to go somewhere else. But last planned bounce on this one. Page 142. Page 142. First full paragraph. And what we're going to do, first paragraph when it says next, can he be assured? Now we're going to skip down a number of lines. So it says, at this point, it may be well to explain alcoholism, the illness. Say that you believe he is a gravely ill, which is fatally ill person, with this qualification, being perhaps fatally ill. If we didn't believe my definition of gravely, it's just repeated. Does he want to get well? You ask because many alcoholics being warped and drugged do not want to quit, but does he? Will he take every necessary step, submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever? And it goes on to say, if he says yes, does he really mean it? Or down inside, does he think he's fooling you? And then after rest and treatment, he will be able to get away with a few drinks now and then. We believe a man should be thoroughly probed on these points. Be satisfied he's not deceiving himself or you. So that's that idea. Do I want what you have? And am I willing to go to any lengths to get it? And I get to ask myself that. And I want to point something out about this book. This book meets us where we're at. It's not expecting that you're going to say yes to everything. A lot of times it's saying, like, hey, we know how you feel. And so that's kind of what we're going to see as Emily takes us into that next paragraph, which is the human resistance to the course of action that is laid before us. So I'll toss it over to Emily. Pew pew. That's on Fridays. Pew pew is a Friday.
That's okay. As some of these we balked, we thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was absolutely until we let go absolutely. I'm going to read the next one. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there's one that has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. I'll finish it. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Yeah, I definitely can resonate with this. The sentence, we thought we could find an easier, softer way. For those of you that kind of know my story, like the easier, softer way never really helped me, like whatsoever. Like, I drank, I drugged, and I would flip cars in ditches. So I definitely did not learn my lesson the first time or the second, but the third time was the charm. And my parents and other people, they begged me to stop drinking and drugging and using, but I definitely could not, for sure. And when I came in, I was fearless and I didn't know what to expect, but I was as thorough as possible, when I worked the steps the first time because I wanted to quit. And I knew that if I did not quit, then I was going to die because, this is a progressive illness and disease where, we obsess and we use obsessively. And that is just not what I, wanted to do anymore. And I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. But then it says, remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. That is that step three. It's made that decision to turn my will and the life over to the care of God as I understood him. It wasn't until like I understood a power greater than myself that I was able to quit drinking and drugging and change my lifestyle. And then, half measures availed me absolutely nothing. I can definitely like it's not like a buffet, where you can pick steps that you want to do throughout, your journey, but we have to do every single one of these, as honest and thoroughly as we can because I've done that in the past. I would pick and choose of what steps I want to do, but I was not very successful and I was very miserable. And I almost relapsed like twice doing that. And I had to learn my lesson the hard way. And my sponsor at the time definitely could not help me. It was just me that I realized that I can only help myself. And with God's strength, He was able to show me and provide a way. And I have, the knowledge now that nothing, is half done. I didn't halfway drink my way through life or halfway, drug through my life. It was only through God and, he protected and cared for me regardless of how many mistakes I made. But, he pulled me through. So that's all I have for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, that next paragraph when it says that some of these we balked. Now, a lot of times we hear this read at meetings because every meeting almost how it works, right? And so we kind of hear this like some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way because people are just like wanting to read it and don't want to read in front of people and all that. But what it's saying at some of these, like these steps, we balked. Now, to balk is a baseball term because sports, and I think, oh yeah, I'm sure we've got two Atlanta Braves fans. Go sports! So if the pitcher for the Atlanta Braves, they used to put that on TBS, so I'd watch it back in the day. I don't know who's pitching for the Braves, but so if the pitcher for the Braves begins to throw a pitch and then stops, that is a balk, and the batter gets to go to first base. Another visual for what it means to balk is if you've ever seen like horses do show jumping or do steeplechase, like a horse. Imagine a horse like a gallop towards this jump, and at the last minute it goes nope and like stops. That's balk. So at some of these we balked, and we can ask ourselves, hey, did we ever balk? I know nobody here's ever balked on a night step. Not you guys, right? And it says, we thought we could find an easier, softer way. I'm always looking for the path of least resistance. I don't think that's an alcoholic thing. I don't think that's a drug addict thing. I think that's a human being thing. I want the easier, softer way. But this is like the tone with which it is like written. But we could not. Our experience is that we tried easier, softer ways. Man, a 12-step fellowship is the last place I come. And the 12 steps in a 12-step fellowship is the last thing I try, right? I got to try everything else and have it not work, typically. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. So it's begging us, please give this your best go from the beginning. Dive into this course of action. That's what it's saying. And when it says we tried to hold on to our old ideas, well, the last chapter was about letting go of our old ideas, about this spiritual awakening, about a power greater than ourselves. Let go of our old ideas. Emily kicked off this meeting with the lay aside prayer, or a version of the set aside prayer, laying aside what I think I know to be willing to have an old experience. And the result was nothing. And by the way, as Emily was talking about half measures and nil, the result is I get drunk again. The result is I get high again. The result is I relapse until I let go of my old ideas. Absolutely. Now, if I'm here today and I'm like, okay, Paige, I hear you. I hear the book. I need to let go of my old ideas, but how? How do I do this? Because that's me. I have a brain that really needs literal instructions. You need to tell me how. But when I was new, I didn't have the courage. I'll share this. I know this will shock you, but when I came into recovery, I had a codependent hostage situation where we're in a dumpster and it's on fire and careening off a cliff that I called a loving relationship. And we needed to break up. And the old timers would be like, Paige, you just got to let go, let God. And what I would say to them is, yes. Oh, that's so wise. Yes, I definitely need to let go, let God. What's happening in my head is like, I don't know what you mean. How do I do that, right? So when we talk about how do I let go of my old ideas, and I'll tell you, it's the same, how do I let go and let God? What action do I tangibly take to let go of my old ideas? Inventory. That's how I truly can let go of these old ideas. I take them through the columns. In the second step, when we're laying aside our old conceptions of God, we're not laying them aside indefinitely, because often that's sort of the barrier. It's like, oh, you're asking me to lay aside the pain and the suffering and some of all these things forever. No, we'll pick that back up in step 4 and we'll begin to see them in a new way. So I just wanted to offer that. So it's like tangible, something to grab a hold of. And so when it says remember, now one of the things too is when the book went out to the world, it was edited, and what we have is the original manuscript. Now the original manuscript of how it works, My old home group, they would read that at every single meeting, the original manuscript. And I'll read some of it. So it says, remember that you are dealing with alcohol. Cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for you. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. You must find him now. So before it went out to the world, the editors was like, yo, could we turn this down, homie? This is a little intense. And y'all know that, by the way, that's historically accurate. That was in the notes. They were like, homie, chill it out. You can ask Gary. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But that's the thing. So when it talks about remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful, without help, it is too much for us. That is a step one idea, a step one proposition. That I'm dealing with alcohol, or I'm dealing with drugs, or I'm dealing with codependency, or I'm dealing with gambling, or I'm dealing with what brings you to this all-inclusive study, and it is too much for me. I've got no defense against that relapse. Step one. But there is one, capital one, who has all power. And if I am powerless, I need power. That one is God. Now, that idea that there is a power, that there is a solution, that is a step two idea. And when it says, may you find him now, that decision that I make that I am going to find this power is a third step decision. Now, what we'll see is the third step is ultimately going to be a decision to work these 12 steps as a way of life. Like my life depends on it because it does. That's part of why we're reading the course of action that we take before we really dive into the meat and potatoes of step 3. What am I deciding to do? Well, it's going to be what we see on 59, top of 60. And as Emily was diving into that, half measures avail us nothing, which is rude. And I'll just like you know what I mean? We joke about it. We talk about half measures. It avails us nothing. I think I should get a little something for something. You know, I'm not saying I should get all of it for half measures, but I think I should get at least 3/4. And I know that's more than half measures, but I think I should get a little something, right? So what does, and we joke about half measures. What does that mean? Like really, like clearly and really simply. Anything less than all 12 steps as a way of life that I grow and that I deepen, and I will relapse. That's what that means. Nil is I'm going to relapse. Avail us nothing, I will relapse. That's what that means. And then it says we stood at the turning point. Now, this third step is the turning point of our entire lives. It is the precipice for a new way of life. Now, a precipice is the edge of a cliff. And I'm like, oh man, I'm going to go on this. Is it cool if I go on this little tangent? I'm like, cool. I have permission. So I describe it like this. Alcoholism or addiction is like a monster that is chasing me in the woods. And I see, like after a while, I see that it is a monster, and I start running. And I am running as fast as I can to try to outrun this monster. And that monster really is the mental obsession. That thought that takes me back to the first drink. And I am sprinting. I'm giving it everything that I got. But that monster always bridges the distance and comes and gets me and takes a swipe, and I take a drink and off I go. And I'm hurt and I'm broken and I pull myself up and I'm like, never again. And I run from that monster, but it always chases me down and tears me to pieces. And I'll try hiding from that monster. I'll find a hollowed out log, and that'll be the relationship, or that'll be the gym, or that'll be a geographic. And I'll try good things, try to put distance between me and that monster, but it gets me again and again and again. And after a while, I begin, and see, I'm pointing that out because it's not like I wasn't trying before. It's not like I wasn't trying to stay sober before, but everything that I was trying was insufficient against this monster. And I am running through this forest, and I know that it's hopeless. And by some miracle, I make my way to a clearing. And I see, and I book it. I'm giving everything I got. And I run, and what I end up is at the edge of this cliff. Now, at the edge of this cliff, I turn behind me, and I see the monster that is barreling down. And that's my step one, that monster is going to get me. I've got nothing that I can put between me and that monster. I am powerless. I am defenseless. It is coming and I cannot stop it. It is not a matter of if, but when it's happening. And then I look over the edge of the cliff, and what I see is a cloud of unknowing. And yes, I did rip that off from a 14th century anonymous author. Uh, and what I mean is that cloud of unknowing. There's this cloud, and I can't see what's beneath that cloud. I can't see. I do not know. But what I hear is I hear your voices beneath that cloud yelling, "Jump, jump, take that leap of faith. We're here. Do it. We promise it's worth it." Now, with the knowledge that that is monster is barreling down, and with the slight faith, just not even, I can't see, I can't trust, I don't know, but I got no other option. I might as well believe you. I take that leap of faith. And the third step is a decision to jump. And the fourth step is when I begin to leap. 4 through 9. That's the action of leaping. That's the action of jumping. That's what takes me from that hopeless position to that hope. And I'll spoil the ending. What is on the other side of that cloud of unknowing? Well, on page 100, it talks about when we put ourselves in God's hands, the result was better than anything we could have imagined. Who catches me is God, higher power, the creator, the spirit of the universe. That is what is on the other side. I can't know it if I'm here on page 59 and I've not taken the actions of the steps. It is a leap of faith, but this is the turning point, the direction for our entire lives. And then it says, we asked. And anytime in this book it says we asked, that's a prayer. Y'all know there was a prayer and how it works? We hear it at like every meeting. It's a sneaky little prayer. I love my sneaky prayers, my sneaky promises. I love them. My sneaky descriptions of spiritual awakening. They're my fave. So we asked his protection and care with complete abandon. God, creator, high power, spirit of the universe. I ask your protection and care with complete abandon. So when I'm standing at that precipice, and whether that precipice is the third step decision, or a fourth step, or an amends that I don't want to make, or speaking at a meeting that I'm scared to speak at, or taking any action that I don't want to do, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe, God, I ask your protection and care with complete abandon. And that's what I'm called to do. Dive with complete abandon, not dive and then grab hold of the cliff. Monster's gonna get me. I gotta let go and dive. So that's it on those things for me. Over to you, Emily. Pew pew.
Thanks, Paige. Okay. 59 at the bottom. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, made to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What in order? I cannot go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism, and C, that God could and would if we were sought. Um, this just reminds me of when Bill wrote in his story in the previous pages that he had 12 steps before there were even 12 steps. You know he could apply this to his life, and now that he finally made it official and it's on paper, we are able to follow this as a guide for our lives. um and then, he puts what in order I cannot go through with it. A lot of us think that we cannot do the 12 steps, but, as long as we're willing and able to, maintain anything, um, through Him, we are able to do our best and live these steps according to His will. And, we have to be willing, to grow, and grow through his spiritual lines. And it is definitely a journey, and we're not going to get this overnight, and we are not perfect, but that's why it is that we grow, through this program every day, and we're not going to get it right ever, but this is why it's a lifelong journey. And yeah, and then I like the three clear, pertinent ideas, um, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. It doesn't matter what kind of addiction you have, as long as you have absolutely no control and you have the obsession, and the allergy. Until we have like a spiritual awakening, we're not able to stop these compulsive things in our lives. Be that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. It did not matter who begged me to stop drinking, drugging, driving drunk, whatever I did in the past. It didn't matter. I did it, and that's what I um, wanted to do. And until God intervened in my life, I was not able to stop. And by God's grace, I am able to stop today, and I have a solution. And that's how I was successful through this, and still, doing the steps every day. And that God could and would if He were sought. It was just a matter of me having faith as small as like a mustard seed, just to ask Him for help and daily surrender, that I was able to um, keep going, at this rate in my life. And there's evidence of that. It's like the promises, they happened very slowly for me, but that's because I was very hard-headed and um, unwilling to believe, in anything. But once I got there, I started seeing those promises very slowly but surely come true. So I like how it works for sure, because I can break it down and look at every sentence and being able to apply this to my life. Um, yes, that's all I have. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. And I love, so it says here, when it says, here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. You spoke about, hey, this isn't a buffet thing, like it is suggested, but we don't got an alternative. But what I want to point out is when it says, here are the steps we took, what it's saying is, here are the actions we. Now, the we was the first 180 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Here are the actions we took. And so that is important, because I don't know about you. For much of my alcoholism, my drug addiction, people were telling me what I should do. Here's what you need to do. Here's the best practices. You need to do this. You need to do that. That's not what we're doing. Instead, we are telling you what we have done. And I'm a big believer, that the we, of course, was the first 180 members. But the more of us who take the course of action that is outlined in this book, the more of us that become included in the we. So if I am a recovered member of whatever 12-step fellowship you're a part of, I am a part of this we. Here's the actions that we took, and that's why the 12 steps are listed in past tense plural. So it's almost the idea of the steps. You can think of them as like a checklist. Here are the actions that I took. Reports of actions taken. Have I done these things? And so when it says We admitted we were powerless over alcohol. It's in past tense because it's an action that we took. It's plural because it is what the first 80 and then more since then have taken. Now, I'll break some stuff down with it. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol. What does it mean to be powerless? Powerless means that I will drink again. It's going to happen, and that there's nothing that I can do to stop it. And then what we see is an M dash, which is always fun to talk about, like sexy on a Monday morning. M dash versus an N dash. An M dash is that longer dash. The length of an M on a typewriter, and N is shorter, like a hyphen. And so the M dash is actually used for, I was going to say emphasis. So you got to make sure you put the right emphasis on the right syllable. But it's used to emphasize or to add additional information. And so that our lives have become unmanageable. If I cannot stop myself from acting out on the behavior or taking that first drink or taking that first drug that is ruining my life, I have an unmanageable life. Now, step 2, it says, came to believe that, not even in a power greater than ourselves. So that's step 2, part 1. Actually, did I bring it up ahead of time? I did. I'm doing a screen share. I'm so sorry. So came to believe that a power greater than ourselves. That is step 2, part 1. Can I believe that there is a power greater than myself? I don't need to like that power. I don't need to know that power. I don't need to define that power. But when I come to meetings like this and I see people like you, and I see people who have recovered, the light is on in their eyes, there's a hope in their spirit, and they say a power has done this for them, I cannot deny that there is a power. That's step 2, part 1. Could there be a power? Step 2, part 2, is that this power could restore me to sanity. What do we mean by that? Could this power remove from me the thought that I have when I'm sober that tells me I can get drunk, that tells me I can get high, that tells me this time will be different? What is more powerful, this power or my rinky-dink little problem with drugs and alcohol? Like I'm trying to softball it. We're having a whole lot of baseball references today, which I'm feeling good about. So that's step 2. And 3 is made a decision. So the thrust of the third step is simply a decision. I won't say just, because as we're talking about, it is a monumental decision that changes the course of my life. And it is a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Care. God's care. Now think about anything that you've ever cared for. That requires love and attention. There's a gentleness that's implied. There's a nurturing. So my will in my life will be cared for. Also, how's my will in my life doing on my own? Not great, guys. Not great. It's on fire. But also, I want to point out my will and my life does not get turned over in step 3. I'm just reiterating the point that I made earlier. My will and my life gets turned over as I take 4 through 9 and continue that process in 10, 11, 12. That is how my will and my life goes from my hands to God's hands, from that hopelessness to that hope. Now, a lot of people talk about our will is our thoughts and our lives are our actions. But I like to be a little bit of a contrarian, not too much of one because I want you to like me. But a sponsee of mine was sharing this idea that what if our will was our actions and our lives were the results? And that was something that really resonated with me, especially if you're like me, where like when I am off the beam spiritually, I wake up and then there's a thought that's just on me, and it's that I suck and I hate myself and all of that. And I can't change my thinking with my thinking. It changes through action. So what if? Anywho, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves? Well, that shouldn't be too hard. I've been taking everybody else's for years. I'm just kidding. And then when it says admitted to God in the 5th step, to ourselves and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. What I want to point out is that word admit. There's two ways to look at the word admit. One is that it's a confession. Like, I've got to admit that I stole your car, I slept with your husband, and I peed on your carpet. that a confession. And if you're wondering, I'm just kidding. I would never do those things. It was linoleum. That's one way to look at the word admit. Now, the other way to look at the word admit, now we're rocking with the baseball today. So let's say we all got tickets to see the Braves, right? We got to see to see the Braves play. We got tickets to them. And what will it say? It will say on the ticket, admit one. I'm really sorry if we've got like a Mets fan in the crowd or like something like that. A Phillies fan? I don't know. So it will say admit one. So one way to look at the word is as admit is that it's a confession. But the other is a letting in. To let in. Because that ticket lets me in. So we're letting in God and another human being. Now, when it talks about the exact nature of my wrongs, what are those? Well, the exact nature of my wrongs, my defects of character, and my shortcomings are the exact same thing. Because it doesn't make sense that I become aware of something in step 5, become willing for something else to leave in step 6, and then ask for a third separate thing to go in step 7. Then it just makes the most sense to see, man, this is what's blocking me from this power. I'm willing for it to go, and then ask for it to be taken away. And I'll point out in 6 and 7, I am not in defect removal, baby. I am in the willingness department. This power takes it from me. And then, so we make amends to all, I'll talk more about step 10 just because I'm aware of the time. I got 5 minutes and I'm not doing well. So 10 is continue to take well, hold on. Now I feel bad that I'm skipping over 8. So 8 made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. In the original manuscript, it said complete amends. So, I mean, they softened that one for us. And it's not just people. That's why it's important to not take the steps off the wall, but to take the directions. I've got to make amends to institutions and businesses. And if you're like, what amends could I possibly have? Well, if the IRS is calling you, there's an amends to make, you know. I get a lot of scam calls from American numbers, so the IRS has been calling me a lot, but don't worry, I'm a Canadian. I don't have amends to the IRS. The Canadian Revenue Agency, that's a different story. And I'm just kidding. All right, so then made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And what it's breeding is that consideration, that thoughtfulness of others, that I set right my wrongs, except if it's going to cause more harm to other people. Now in step 10, it says continued. And when I got here, it said continued. And then at 1 year sober, it said continued. And then at 5 years sober, it said continued. They got to update this thing. At 15 years sober, it says continued. They've not updated. You know what that means? I got to continue. There's no stopping. Rude. And it says continue to take personal inventory. When did I learn to do that? I learned to do that in step 4. I learned what to do with that inventory in 5 and 6 and 7. And then when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Where did I learn to set right my wrongs? Step 9. So the 10th step is a continuation of 4 through 9. And 11 is sought. So what I'm doing is seeking. And there's different levels of seeking, but I'm trying to seek this deeper level through prayer and meditation, not and or, which that's how I was reading it for a long time. And or, no, it's both, baby. To improve. And not until I get 100% A++. No, I'm never done. Or conscious contact with God. Now the word conscious is that with knowing. In step 2 in we agnostics, I don't have that knowing, that understanding. To understand means to know through experience. I'm building that experience. How do I get a connection with power? How do I get a conscious contact? That is the purpose of the 12 steps. And we pray only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. That's what I'm asking for. A power that I don't have. A knowledge for how I'm supposed to show up. Step 12. It says, having had a spiritual awakening is the result of these steps. It kicks off with a promise, and it is the same promise that Ebby made to Bill. He says, my friend promised that when these things were done, which is rude, because what you're asking is that I have to do the work to get the result. That's not the order that I would like. I would like the free trial version of Spiritual Awakening, and then I'll forget to cancel, and then I'll do the steps. That's what I want. But what you're asking is that I do this work, but it's promised that I get these results. So that's a message of hope. If you're here today, you're relapsing, you're struggling, you don't know if this thing will work for you, it is promised. Now, the second part of step 12 is that we tried to carry this message to alcoholics, or whatever brings you to this all-inclusive study, that I work with others. Sponsorship. The word sponsor is not found in the first 164 pages, but the job description is all over it. And then it says, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, the affairs is all areas of my life. And for me, the principles are not nebulous concepts like hope and faith and courage and brotherly love and justice. And if that works for you, that's amazing. But for me, the principles are the tangible actions of the 12 steps. See, I have a real literal brain. I don't know how to practice hope, but I do know how to practice prayer. I do know how to practice meditation. I do know how to practice inventory. And then a hope comes. And then we don't got a lot of time, but so there's a group, it's called YPAW. It's Young People of AA. And as you go through, they read how it works. There's call outs and people will yell things, which is fun and silly, but it actually helps us to see a commonly read part of the book in a brand new way. So many of us, and I love this, it says many of us, it's like, what an order. Like, we see that, it's like, whoa, that's too much. Like, that's meeting us all where we're at. We all saw the steps on the wall and did a little audit and thought that one, some of that one, a little bit of that one, none of that one, gross, right? We all did that. So we all had that, what an order, I can't go through with it. And the people in YPAW will chat, I'm so discouraged. Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. These actions, we have not been perfect. And the call outs will go, but we're saints. And then it says, we are not saints, which I'm like, oh. And then they'll go, what's the point? The point is we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. And then they make a joke about lines. But the point is that I'm willing to grow. I'm not asked to be perfect. But when we talk about sainthood, there's a gentleman by the name of Thomas Merton. And he is what's known as the Thomas Merton prayer. And he describes sainthood in the perfect way. Sainthood is about being who I truly am called to be, who God would have me be, who I've always wanted to be. And so when it says the principles we have set down are guides to progress, we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. What we're trying to say is that it is what matters, and why I'm pedantic about spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection, as opposed to its progress, not perfection. Because how I'm growing spiritually is what matters. It does not matter if I'm getting the job back, getting the car back, getting the family back, getting the relationship back, getting the money in the bank account, getting the abs back. While all of that is wonderful and is a gift of this of recovery, is a gift that happens in this. Well, I don't, no promises on the abs, but it's a gift of this thing. None of that has the power to keep me sober. And oftentimes I will think that I'm progressing, but I'm not actually growing in what matters. So I want to hold up my experience to, am I growing spiritually? That's what matters. Now, what I'll say really quickly about the 3 pertinent ideas, A and B are step 1 ideas. B is a step 2 idea. 1 is that I can't do it on my own. Or A is I can't do it on my own. B is that no human power could help me. That's step 1. B is step 2, which then leads us into the 3rd step. So that I'm 1 minute over. That's more than enough for me. I'll turn it back to you, Emily.
Thank you so much, Paige. All right, let's end the meeting and then we'll open up for a quick 5-minute share and then we'll close with the Serenity Prayer.